Welcome in. This is Imagine That Gaming. I've got a multiplayer game of Dominions for you guys. I'm very excited to be in this game and just, talk Dominions with folks. If you're not familiar with the game, if somehow you just stumbled upon this through some YouTube algorithm, like you gotta check it out. I think it's one of the greatest strategy games of all time. That's not hyperbolic. Like I just got into this game with the sixth installment, the latest one. And there's tons of nations to play. There's huge variety, strategic depth, like you name it. Seriously, you got to check it out. But I do assume that if you find this video and you watch the series that you're just a Dominions nut like I am, right? You want as much content as you can find, and there's kind of nothing better than watching multiplayer Dominions, like seeing the thought process that goes into each turn, the cat and mouse kind of interplay between players, seeing what kind of crazy strats people come up with, and then how to counter that. There's just an infinite wealth of entertainment, in my opinion. And just a little bit about me. I'm not the most experienced. Like I said, I just got into the game with Dominion 6, and I played about a dozen multiplayer games, which is not that many, but they take a long time to play. And I'm very unfamiliar with late age. I've never played this nation in multiplayer. Barely in single player, just to test. Most of my like wins have come in early age. And yeah, so this game I'm in, you have to have achieved victory at least once in Dominion 6 multiplayer to get into the game. So it's intermediate plus, and there's been some chatter in the Discord. Some people know each other. They play with each other before. So I expect some good competition, and hopefully it's a good balanced lobby. We're playing on a Dream Atlas map, which are random, but they're supposed to be a little more balanced than the natural map gen in the game. So we'll get some interesting borders, hopefully. We'll have to actually scout things. And I don't really like the map nuke meta that most people tend to play. It feels very sterile and predictable. And I played Dominion's such a random game in the first place, right? Like some nations are just obviously more powerful than others. And like, I wish people would brace that with the map generation as well. But, long story short, we're playing Piconye here. They're kind of the opposite of the nations I tend to play. I tend to play like kind of mobile thug kind of nations, and this is not it. This is one of the slower nations in the game, and but I think they're pretty unique and pretty fun to play. I don't know what people think of their power level, like if you do kind of like rankings against other nations of the age, but they play very fun to me, and we have some very interesting tools in the box that we can use. So yeah, what's Piconye about? I don't want to do a whole nation like overview guide, but I'll talk about our units and our commanders and the pretender we go with, of course, and some strategy stuff maybe. And but we want to get into the game, and so yeah, why do I think Piconye is unique to play? Or when I look at any nation, I kind of look at like what's their nation defining unit or sacred, and like uh in terms of what magic they're going to cast in battle and that sort of thing. And to me, this nation is defined, primarily by being little horned men, right? We're size 2, we're small, which has advantages and drawbacks, of course. But then the other thing is that we have this Piconye Pope here. So we have a recruitable Holy Three, which barely any nations get. And he is cap only, but he's not slow to recruit, doesn't break the bank. And so what national smite you have is very important on this nation, and so you really want to pay attention to that. And we'll do smite expansion. It's actually pretty effective and pretty fun. Like we get the sacred sound effect firing off, and heavenly fires raining down on the enemy, and squads will rout before they even reach your slow moving troops, right? And we'll go beyond expansion and use these guys in our armies, and they're pretty cool. We'll come back to them, but I like talking about the troops first, I think. And so if we just look at a mana Piconye, like what does that look like? So the weaknesses should be apparent here in that we're small and weak, right? Strength 6, significantly less than a human, right? Same amount of hit points, so significantly less, but we are cheaper, right? Only 7 gold instead of 10. And we're a little less brave, right? And we're about half as slow as a human, and same as on the strategic map. So we're never moving more than 1 province per turn with our normal troops, right? And but we do have some pretty significant advantages as well that we want to point out. So magic resist 13 is incredibly high for just our basic spearmen, right? Especially for the late age, where most national troops, even very, very powerful troops that people have, they'll just have magic resist 10. Even a lot of sacreds in the late age have magic resist 10. So a good troop would have 11, a great troop would have 12, and we're even better than that on essentially all of our units, right? And then the other thing is our defense. So probably because we're small, but our base defense skill is just three higher than a regular human. So this little spearman guy's got defense 15, so he's unremarkable, but he stays alive longer than you'd think. He's not going to kill anything with this 9 damage, 10 attack, right? But he can be a line holder for you. That's a little less brave, but very cheap. But we have an even better option for that, right? We do get the sword version, which defense goes up to 17. He only costs one more gold. A little less afraid, right? Uh, his damage is still very bad for late age, but he has better attack with that short sword. And both the guys have the same equipment over here, just kind of a standard issue plate cuirass for the age, right? It's not good, it's not bad. The iron cap and shield all standard there. It's same combat speed, movement speed, but then the defender here, this is nation defining to me in terms of our mundane troops. He's still less gold than a human, doesn't break the bank up here. And yeah, check this out, 19 defense for a line troop is just nuts. Base defense skill of 15, which, I mean, even elves don't have that, right? Like commanders, sure, but not just the line troops. And for being so cheap, he's got better armor here. He's got the same attack. He's a little stronger, so he hits. He's approaching respectable. He's a little more brave. Still has that great magic resist. He is abysmally slow. Combat speed too, right? So you're doing the battle playback, and you think this guy's not even moving, right? It's actually pretty comical. Um, and just what I'm thinking about to point out here. So the strength thing is obvious, that we're weaker. We struggle hitting things and getting through heavy armor, right? But this is kind of the actual weakness there. Like there's other ways to kill things, but this siege strength is we're very, very bad. And in the late age of citadels, like it's a serious issue that you have to address in some way because we struggle to siege down even palisades and fortresses, right? So forget about castles and citadels. But yeah, this guy with being 5 to a square, uh, he has 19 defense, which is approaching unhittable levels for regular troops because they can't even if you get a square of these guys and you surround it, you isolate 5 of them, right? Your attacks are being distributed amongst those 5 units, and so it's very hard to harass them down and actually hit them. And um, a lot of that defense is from this tower shield, right? The parry. And so if they do get hit, it's going to be through the shield, which gives them 34 defense. And so I've seen them take hits from giants and trolls like multiple times to just shrug it off because of the shield and the plate hull. So despite having 7 hit points, they're very tanky in melee. Their big weakness, and this goes for all our troops, is AoE attacks, right? Evocations and whatnot. We'll just melt with our low hit points, no resistances, of course. But that goes the other way too. We're much easier to buff, being size 2, right? Uh, and and so we really benefit from AoE buffs, in particular like body ethereal, which you can never have more than AoE 1. So we're a good body ethereal nation, and just buffs in general. Like if we look at our crossbowmen, it's actually one of the better crossbow troops in the game because of our size 2, right? And crossbows don't really care about strength. So a regular human crossbow troop does 11 damage. So we're only doing 1 less, and we're still armor piercing. So we're having opponent's armor, and we take buffs very well. Flaming arrows, the poison arrows, wind guide, etc., etc. And we're very cheap, right? Less gold than humans. So we still got that great MR, bad morale, but you don't really care about that on crossbows. And their armor, they're gonna win crossbow duels for the most part. Especially once you get buffs on them. So we're a good crossbow nation. We'll never get militia or slingers, right? With some nations you might get them to help you siege, but not us. Absolutely useless. But that's fine. We're able to get a bunch of regular troops on the cheap. Even our best troop, it's only 9 gold. So we'll outclass much more expensive national troops in the late age, unless you take AoE attacks into consideration, right? And then we've got 3 sacreds here, but this guy's also pretty fun and unique. We have a bird knight, which is very fun flavor wise. I wish these troops were better. They're very expensive, especially for us. 25 gold a pop, almost 40 recruitment points, and they're just paper thin. So the Warbird they ride on, no protection whatsoever, only 9 hit points. Like it just melts to anything. Like a stiff breeze will take these things out. And it looks like we might have 3 attacks per unit, but this dive attack is only once per battle, right? And the damage on both is just so bad, and our knights know better. So you get the charge bonus with the light lance, but it's not enough. So unless they kill things on the charge when they fly back, they're not going to kill anything, and even then they have to be lightly armored troops. So it's very situational, but they do take buffs very well. So it's a flying unit that you get 3 in a square, right? And so that's, more density than Calum per se, but they struggle to kill things, and they're much hardier than this troop. Good defense with the mount bonus on the rider, but the bird doesn't have good enough defense to not get hit. It's also an animal with bad magic resist, right? And so if we can buff these guys, then they can be effective, but they're not like the raiders you might think. But they do have that incredible mat move, so you can basically a light air force that you know can be situationally useful with our otherwise slow moving troops. And then, yeah, we have these 3 sacreds. We have the cross wielder, which is basically just our crossbowman. No extra damage, no special equipment. He has the same precision. Like, I think having a ranged sacred troop that you can bless is attractive or sounds fun, but I don't think they're effective in practice. This guy, he's basically our not tower shield, less armored sword guy. Tiny bit better stats, but do we really need that? I don't think so, but it doesn't matter because we have the Baculite. And now this is a great sacred, in my opinion. So still very cheap as far as sacreds go, only 13 gold. Again, cheap up here for the most part. Has our best stats, which isn't saying much. Still only 8 strength, 8 hit points, base 12 attack skill. He's got that base defense of 15. Just the regular plate cuirass, even better magic resist, our best morale, same combat speed, but he's defined by his weapon, the Baculus, right? It's in the name. 2-handed weapon. It's magic damage, so we don't have to worry about getting magic weapons somehow, which just turns off so many different things that people can throw at you. Decent stat bonuses here, but then here we go, the Bane of Heresy. So fatigue damage that's armor piercing, only affects gods and sacred units, and it's area effect 1. It hits the whole square, and this just puts things to sleep. So typically very scary sacreds that you would go up against, or even expander gods or other scary sacred units, we have the tool to deal with them. Like, we can put them to sleep very quickly. We'll get 5 in a square, and like the Baculite's not invincible. Like, we have to make sure that they don't die themselves and can make contact with the sacreds, but good enough attack when things are asleep, right? To kill basically anything, or let our mages and other troops clean up. So very good. And the other reason it's so great is that we have this feature here. Every temple adds 1 of the sacred recruit limit, so we can actually get a ton of these guys. We'll get more than any other nation that doesn't have recruit anywhere sacreds, right? And yeah, so interesting lineup, has very distinct weaknesses, but very buffable, pretty spammable, and good stats aside from strength, right? And yeah, we talked about the Pope a little bit, but this thing's just so fun. We're gonna get a ton of these guys. They expand, and then once they expand, they'll join into armies and continue to just be sacred artillery that exactly what they're gonna cast. Like, if we compare this guy to a Astral 2 mage, right? And you've researched some thermology. That Astral 2 mage can cast Mind Burn, which is, people like Mind Burn, it's a good spell. They'll cast it 5 times before getting tired. And so in a long battle, they may cast it 8, 10 times in a pretty long battle. Well, our popes, it'll be around 20, and they're still just smiting away, no problem. They won't. The only thing they'll cast off script is Sermon of Courage if your troops are like facing morale plays, but you would want that. So they just smite all day, and it's pretty effective in the late age when troops don't have great magic resist. And spoiler alert, we go magic skills too, which is going to reduce everyone's magic resist by 1 in our Dominion. And these guys are holy level 3, so they're going to preach our Dominion wherever we go. And because they're Inquisitor, like, I don't care if the enemy has 6, 7, 8 candles, like, you're going to eliminate it pretty much in one turn with when you have enough of these guys in your army. They are old age, and you know, you could address that in your bless. I think it's not really worth it. Like, some will die, it's fine. We don't really care about their map move, right? We're only moving one province per turn regardless, and their encumbrance goes up with age. But again, even when their age is more than this, like, it goes up to at least +2, as far as I know, or even +3. They'll still cast a ton of smites and do just a ton of work for us. Uh, our defining battle mage is this Piconye Sage Priest guy, and a very, very good mage. So every single one is communion capable, right? And then has also have Earth 1 and Fire 1. They have randoms in all those same paths, so we can have Fire 2, Earth 2, Astral 2, and then we splash into Water and Nature. And yeah, very good cross paths. So because of communion, we basically have an arbitrarily high amount of nature and water as well, and so we can cast relief and really take the math out of communions, right? Because communion math, not only does it confuse me, but it'd be very tedious to like calculate the exact communion math you need to not burn yourself out and cast the spells you want. And so I don't want to do that, and just being able to cast relief kind of takes that consideration off the table. And we can also do things like howl and just army wide poison resist and all kinds of fun stuff with nature. And between fire and water, we can get both army wide resistance spells, and then with earth, we can get some lightning resist, shock resist, as well as army of lead, and there's just great astral combat magic that we'll be able to cast it in communions and high levels, and every single one of these will be useful. And they're also sacred, so they take our bless, and they have good research. So 13 research for only 104 gold a year. Again, we go magic scale, so it's gonna be 15 research, and they just kind of do everything for us. And to top it all off, they're recruit anywhere. So we'll build labs and temples and get these guys outside of our forts. Temples are cheap for us, right? We're a very holy nation, and just leaning into that between the popes and these recruit anywhere sage priests, like it's both thematic and fun, which I love about Dominions. That's often the case. Is things will be both thematic and strategic at the same time, or you can connect them that way. But yeah, great mage. We'll just get so many of these guys, and then the only other research option we really have is our magic options is Sage, which is he's just cheap, right? Not sacred, only 100 gold to recruit. We'll have 13 research with our scales, and again, very efficient. So just the cheap option. If we get the astral random, they can go into communions, but otherwise they won't be in combat. And we have a bishop and an archbishop, and they're just the lesser versions of the pope, right? They also have inquisitor, priest level 1, priest level 2, but we'll just have so many popes that we'll never get these guys. And then kind of the same thing with this bishop general, like he has under leadership, and decent upkeep, but our popes bonus have 100 leadership, so they'll actually lead most of our armies. And our bird knight commanders also have 100 leadership and are obviously more mobile, and so they're cheaper than this guy. And if we need to just lead extra troops, even if they're not our bird knights, we'll get the bird knight commander. Speaking of the bird knights, we have one of the best scouts in the game. It's a little more expensive than a regular scout, but much more stealthy. I think regular scouts only have 50 stealth. I think that's accurate. And then yeah, obviously the flying map move, like very, very handy to just be able to get eyes wherever you want them on demand. Cannot be understated how important scouting is in a game like this, not only for nations you're going to attack or that might attack you, but just to see what's going on in the world, right? And knowing like when someone else goes to war with maybe your neighbor, or your neighbor conquers, uh, a distant nation, and now they might turn their eye towards you. All that kind of stuff is good to know. And maybe the less obvious benefit, but so clutch for us, is that they can just drop gems and items on demand, basically anywhere we want. So with the slow moving nation like we are, if we're planning a big offensive, like mid to late game, and we're doing communions and casting a lot of battle magic that take gems, like we don't have to plan very far in advance and give those gems out and potentially, lose them or waste them. We can just have a bird scout drop off gems anytime we want, or if we're crafting boosters or other items we want to drop off, like they can bring it to us. Very handy to have. Um, and yeah, our last guy here is the Prester King, our cap only mage. That's Little Crew. He's just okay. He doesn't break the bank, but he's not good enough for how much he costs, in my opinion. So he has Astral 2 to start and Earth 1. And so that's three total paths, but that's kind of the same as our Sage Priest, right? Uh, he's got the same randoms, so he is our highest chance to get Astral 3, right? Or our only chance to get Astral 3. Uh, but it's, that doesn't make him that much better. He'll fatigue out faster because of his armor. He's also holy level 3, but so are our popes. And he still has old age. Yeah, he's just okay. We'll get some of these guys later in the game probably to fish for that highest astral, and then I believe one of our summons we need him as well in nature with some boosters to get. So we'll fish for some. We'll use them, but we're mostly just gonna get popes, I think. And they do have inspirational +3, which is very high, but only 50 leaderships. You can't have formations, and if you had 100 leadership, it'd be +1. So it's kind of like having inspirational +2. But if we're running into fear plays or other kind of things where morale is very important, they'll lead very elite squads. And with that inspirational +3 and our baculite, like just being a sacred, they get up to 16 morale when they're blessed, and we actually do have +1 morale in our bless. That's another spoiler. So we can have very high morale with our sacreds if needed. So that's our lineup. We're mostly gonna have popes and sage priests, and we'll probably only get crossbows and defenders. See, I really hope we can use bird knights. I think they're really fun, and we'll just get a ton of baculites. And there's a psychological advantage to having a unit like this because, again, even people with very scary sacreds, they'll be less likely to attack us, or they'll be more trepidatious. It can mess with their scripting, right? Because we can put their stuff to sleep. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with other players, and if we can leverage that to our advantage. As far as sites go in the capital, we have an astral earth, another astral and a fire. That's solid income. We'll want to get nature gems for sure, if nothing else, to cast relief in our communions. And summons wise, we'll talk about a couple here. This is the first one we can get, the Malika, and it's interesting, but I think just doesn't have enough hit points to justify the gem investment. Only invulnerability 15, so you'd have to put armor on her to really get her safe. She's not going to cast any spells or anything. Has very high awe, and a little bit of resistances. Can fly, stealthy, has spirit sight. This praise ability kind of passively raises dominion, which is kind of whatever for us. It's going to be high anyways. Great map movement, but if you put gear on her, I think you're just going to throw those gems away. But the second guy we can get, now this is far more interesting. So 27 hit points, not a ton, but it's more respectable, and our defenses go way up. So we're now up to awe 5, which is very, very high. Invulnerability 20. We can't improve that with armor slots, unfortunately. But we have better fire resist. But in addition to the vulnerability, why not? Let's throw ethereal and fire shield on there. So 3 layers, or 3 layers of defense: awe, invulnerability, and ethereal. And then between fire shield and this flame strike, like, this screams raider to me. Like, against PD, if you're going up against mundane troops that don't have magic weapons and aren't going to cast spells against you, like, this could be very effective. And you can add gear to improve their chances, and with that massive map move, like, it opens up a raiding vector that we otherwise wouldn't have with our troops. And then the Ariel here, the Aerolim, also very powerful. And This one's more of a not a combatant, but a nature 3 mage, also holy 3, but we can get that elsewhere. Oh, I'll goes up to 6, which is nuts, but less invulnerability, right? You don't want this in combat. It's there to cast spells, and it's also a healer 3, which most nations don't have access to. So, even if our popes get old and start racking up afflictions, like we'll get one or two of these, or maybe more, and they can heal troops. These other angels, very expensive, very very expensive, and I don't even think with boosters we can get them. So I don't think they're really worth talking about. We can get some different animals. We can get the Cyclops, which has great siege strength, but I don't think it's good value. Like I think it takes 9 Earth Gems. You don't get very many, and they're undisciplined. Like they're not good in combat, and we do have a solution to our siege strength, and that's with the Pretender we went with. So yeah, Virtue. So we're going with Air Shield and Superior Morale here, and with this Air Magic, uh, we can get Great Eagles. So it's level 6 Conjuration, so we won't get it anytime soon. But Great Eagles have amazing siege strength, and they can fly, and our Bird Knight commanders can lead them around, which, this summon doesn't come with a commander, but we can lead them. And we'll get 11 per cast with Virtue, and they'll solve all our siege strength issues. And, we don't have to fight with them. They can just come in the turn after we take a fort province and siege it down for us. So her after expansion, we'll want her to search for air gems for us. And so yeah, so why Virtue? Well, she's one of the best expanders in the game, in my opinion. Probably top 5, I would think. And why do I think that? Well, she's got great features down here, which are very similar to what we just looked at, right? She's actually cheaper for us, right? So thematic as well. And but she has full gear slots. So most of these monster expanders here, they just have the 2 miscellaneous and a crown slot, right? This one has a helmet, but most just have the crown, 2 slots. Um, and so when these other pretenders might start to fall off or just be less versatile, we can equip Virtue however we want. But she comes out of the gate pretty strong. She has less hit points than most monster pretenders, but she's got that awe 5, very good. Invulnerability 25, which is kind of the sweet spot, at least for expansion. Good resistances here for shock and fire. She's a magic being, but she has good magic resist, and we can pump that higher if we need to. Great mat move on the flyer. Got the Spirit Sight and Combat Caster, which is actually pretty relevant for her, uh, because it not only lets her cast more spells in melee, but it reduces the fatigue from armor. So we can actually give her decent armor, and she'll suffer from the fatigue much less that way. And so she can actually be a combat caster and do shockwaves and stuff for us. But even before then, she comes equipped with the Flambeau, which is a very good weapon, armor piercing, tons of damage, has AoE 3 fire attack, which isn't that high, but gets indies, or if you do go up against undead demons, like, that's gonna melt them pretty quickly. Uh, and so, yeah, she expands very well. She's not fire and forget. Like she can die with that weak amount of hit points. You're gonna cast Misform, but if that pops and things can hit hard enough, she can go down. Or if you do go up against magic weapons, etc. It's gonna be strategic with her and how you expand. But kind of the best part is because of this flying, we don't like other expander gods. Depending on who they are and what the bless is, like they might need heart skin or regeneration to like be safe, and so that means you have to expand into your dominion unless you have that research path uh, unlocked. And for us, air shield is just a level 0 spell, so she doesn't even have to expand into our dominion. And so if we see like a farmlands or a choke point or something that is not close to our capital, we can use her and just hop and get it and then kind of backfill. So she's very powerful in that regard as well. Um and yeah, so why air shield? Well, I think honestly it's kind of mandatory on this nation to me. Like you can build nations however you want, but the Baculite here has no shield, weak armor, not many hit points, and so very vulnerable to crossbows or other air fire, and even some spells are classified as missiles, right? And air shield's just going to negate 80% of those. And as a huge benefit, like our popes are sacred, so all have air shield. All of the mages that we have in battle are going to have air shield, right? And And so normally, like, they'll still die to arrow fire every once in a while, right? Air shield's not 100%, but it really, really helps, and you don't have to like be concerned about arrow fire and expansion, or if enemies are gonna mass a bunch of crossbows against you. You just kind of we're gonna take that off the table entirely. Um, and so I think between having air shield, using virtue to expand, and then breaking us into great equals, I feel like it's a great setup for us. And our scales are honestly, I think, very good for having an expander that's pretty expensive. So we have 6 candles, which is good to start, and we're gonna bump that up to 7 or even 8 very quickly because of our cheap temples, and we're incentivized to get them right. This we'll get more sacreds that way. We'll be able to recruit sage priests outside of the cat outside of forts. So we're gonna get a lot of temples, and then I kind of found order +1 over production to be the sweet spot, and we could go all the way up to order 3, if we had more points because of Piconye here. And I'll come back to cold scales. And late age is the age of growth to me. I would love to get more, of course, but we'll grow over time and get more income there. And then you already talked about magic scales and how important that is. And so I feel like you can make an argument kind of for anything, whether it's bless, pretender, scales. But I do feel like 2 magic is essential on this nation. Like, you get the obvious benefit of increasing research, and it does add up to a ton over the course of a game. But just giving everything -1 magic resist is so huge for our popes and our astral mages, and it just feels like a no-brainer. And then, I don't mind going misfortune when you go order, and we also just have good scales otherwise, and events are based on your scales often. So if we had bad scales, like a lot of death and just chaos and drain, etc., and you take misfortune, like, you're asking for trouble. But with good scales and misfortune, like, we'll have bad events throughout the game, but they won't be that bad for the most part. Hopefully, fingers crossed, right? Uh, okay, so why cold scales? If you're a veteran player, you might be cringing at this, and why do I say that? If we look at evocation here, Murdering Winter. So it's a level 7 evocation spell ritual, right? It takes 5 water to cast and 40 water gems. And so this does armor negating cold damage that scales based on how cold the province is, right? And this does exactly what it says on the tin. It just murders everything of ours. Like, you saw how many hit points we have for our troops, and this just kills everything. Even commanders that have access to the good tints are likely to die in cold scales. And so, yeah, this is important to know, and be aware of. But we are in late age. There's less gems to go around. How many nations are realistically going to be able to cast this? So Atlantis is in the lobby. They can cast this natively with some boosters on their mages, right? So they could become a natural enemy of ours. But it's a level 7 evocation spell, and I, Atlantis doesn't scare me. I think we match up pretty well actually against them. And they might think we're a good war target for them because they have the ice armor as well, which also scales on cold. And between that and this, like, they may attack us, but all their troops, even their sacred, like their ice troops, they just have 10 magic resist. So I think we'll be okay. We might want to, take them off the board if that's an option, before they're able to research Murdering Winter, but they're not going to get it anytime soon. And then for other nations, I don't think any other nation in the lobby can cast this natively, and I don't feel like water is a very popular bless for pretenders. Uh, so we'll see if this bites us in the butt. But why did I go cold scales? Well, it gives us the most amount of points, right? Like, we could go up to heat too, but that's a lot less points. So that's the obvious reason. But also our troops move so slow, right, on the map. Map move, 4, and so we might as well incur that slow moving penalty to other nations in our lands, right? Unless they have snow move or whatnot. And then the other reason is rivers, right? If there's a long river, we might, and there's no bridge, like, and we have heat scales, like, we could have to march 10 provinces to get all the way around it. And or we could have a river right next to our capital, or something. And so I just kind of wanted to take that consideration off the table. Between that and the points and everything else, I feel like we have to go cold scales, and we'll see if that bites us in the end. This feels like a great setup to me, I think, all things considered. And I could look at some of the other pretenders I considered real quick. So I do love the Great Enchantress. I love Glamour Magic. It's probably my favorite magic path. She would break us into Glamour, and she gives us a guaranteed Glamour gem, right? We still get Air Shield. Uh, Blur here essentially would make our Baculates have act like they had defense 19, just as good as our defenders, and that starts to approach the unhittable level for a lot of mundane troops, and so that can be very good. And then, but that same idea, low light vision would give them dark vision, and we can very easily cast. I always think it's astral, but it's fire, isn't it? Yeah, solar eclipse. So alteration level 5. Any of our fire 2 sage priests can cast this, or we can do communion. It just takes one fire gem, and it's like a lesser darkness, easier to cast. But still -3 attack, -3 defense, and -3 precision. And so our popes with our smites, they don't care about precision at all. It's 100 precision to cast that. And then if we give low light vision to our sacreds, like they're only have half this penalty. It could be very, very powerful, and this is a spell we'll consider casting even without low light vision, because we can also cast Cat Eye Warriors as well to give any of our troops dark vision, and so it could be very effective. And I did consider using her. I think she's pretty good. I think we have one worse scale here, but otherwise the same. And she could be fun. Would be our highest nature without our summon. And then, yeah, the Great Zeta here is interesting. Would give us a high level astral caster. Is again same with air shield. Not a combatant, right? Low hit points. Has some awe though, and but can teleport, which is handy. And yeah, we still get air shield. I think we actually have better scales here. So again, I would probably go 2 order, 1 production, but we have an extra growth here, 1 less candle, it looks like. But with Arcane Finesse, we're kind of just doubling down on this idea of, well, now we would lower magic resist by 2 in our lands, essentially between the magic scales and Arcane Finesse. So I think that could be a pretty fun way to play. But I kind of wanted the expansion help just to take, like, with Virtue, she's so good that you kind of have to be careful of expanding too fast and getting too big and being like early coalition. Like she's very good. And then I tried a couple Titans just to see if they would work. Does not have synergy with the Chaos Power with Order, but it would break us into Death and Blood. It comes fairly well equipped, but even with Mist Form, like 18 protection is just not enough. Uh, like this guy can only take very weak provinces, and then same thing here, but we would need even more gear, right? Would need armor and just not strong enough even with Mist Form, but would break us into Death. But it was fun to try those. It could be an option to play. And then this guy, still air shield, right? Low light vision and just pure scales. We have Growth 3 and Order 3 with still 1 production, and he's not an expander at all. Like he's not a good researcher. Even despite that sack of hit points, like there's no way to get this guy to expand. Doesn't have gear slots, right? But playing with a ton of scales could be interesting. Could be pretty fun. But yeah, I went easy mode with Virtue here, and she feels appropriate for the nation, right? Like we'll role play how we can, and I don't think we. Yeah, I named her Victoria, so V for victory, V for virtue, right? She's our Prester Queen. She's going to lead us to victory. And yeah, I think it's going to be a ton of fun to play this match. I hope you guys join me, and imagine that. We'll see you soon.